All right, here's what you got, people. I was thinking about this, and I decided my dad's diabetic, so I'm always like buying him these things. I was like, take this out with you, like, and he never does because he's old, and the way you deal with diabetes is you just pretend like you don't have it. So, like, taking a Stroop walk while out in the barn with you, no, that doesn't make any sense. But anyways, whenever I think of chip production, semiconductors, I always think of these. And literally, they make them thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. We can make 2 millimeters, which is almost like you can't even see it sideways. But you can remember this. You can tell all your friends and family there's this goofy guy that plays Tipsy and eats stroopwafels. Here's what you need to know about everything in tech right now. This is being replaced by this. Okay, this is how this works now. This is how chips work now. It's called advanced packaging. They're stacking layers like an architecture and radically improving not only the throughput, but the energy efficiency, and energy inefficiency becomes heat. Like your car is like 15% efficient. Where's all the other energy go? Heat. So all these things you're hearing about NVIDIA and this, that, and the other thing, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. It's weird. It all has to do with heat. And heat, of course, is the energy that's not being used. So, but the big theme today is the war and the NASDAQ. This is like my thing. I'm the guy that comes on here and says the war and the NASDAQ. What do you mean the war? You mean Iran? No, the war we've been in for 25 years. Remember, since the planes like magically went into the building? And I think what just happened, this is my theme, I'll just blurt it out. Hey, engine, Rocky, chill. My theme is that this week, the reason the NASDAQ had a turn, it isn't because of the BLS numbers or anything like that. It's the psychology is becoming questionable about the tech as we've been presenting it. And it's also becoming questionable about the war. The USS Gerald Ford was turned around and sent back out of the theater of operations because it was hit by Iran. Remember this thing a couple months ago? Like, some people thought it was sabotage. Some people thought that I think they had been deployed for like 300 days. And then we're being redeployed because we're overcommitted, we're overstretched, right? And this is what the war on terror is. It's always offensive. There's always some Muslim nation somewhere that didn't do what they were told, so we have to go to war with them. Libya, Syria, which was now run by Al-Qaeda, Afghanistan, which was never run by Al-Qaeda, was run by the Taliban, and still is. They make fucking videos and joke about cutting off Americans' heads, say, we don't do this anymore. Why don't you come visit Afghanistan? Because the war on terror is something we don't understand. And we still don't understand. We all voted for Trump because he said that Iraq was a disaster. When we went into even a bigger disaster, we went to war with a country with, 4 or 5 times the population that's not a fucking desert. So air power is somewhat limited over a mountainous area. Like, it's just a complete fucking disaster because we have no control over Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a reality TV star who fucked a 13-year-old. But let's all calm down and be friends. So the NASDAQ is the war because they're both based on tech, right? White people like to think that they have better tech than everybody else. And what just happened is the USS Gerald Ford, I think it's the biggest aircraft carrier in the world, got turned around by one missile. Deep in the bowels of social media you'll never see this on television, just like you don't see anything about the Gerald Ford on not even MSNBC, not even the opposition shows you what's really going on in the war because it's not opposition. Is it the Iranians hit the radar? You've seen the videos of them hitting the radars in Kuwait and Bahrain and Dubai and shit. Like you can see this little geodesic dome thing that has the whirligig inside it, right? And it's just sitting there and something, a relatively small explosion just takes out the radar. And then they just sit there and go, I was thinking about this as I was getting ready to do this. Iran is a lot like Vietnam, meaning Vietnam could never even had 1/1000th of 1% of the firepower that the United States had, right? So they would make these little booby traps, right? We all know about this. And if you study them, I used to have like this thing about the Vietnam War when I was a teenager. I thought it was just the most mesmerizing, unbelievable thing that like this giant country would take on this little tiny poor jungle thing and stalemate. I just thought it was there's a scene in Apocalypse Now where they're going up the river into Cambodia and the rivers get narrower and narrower and they go under this like F-15 tailpiece that's just stuck in the mud of the jungle. To me, like that's like the ultimate image of Vietnam. But here we are, we go to war with okay, sorry, I get sidetracked. A little bit of coffee adds to it. The booby traps. The booby traps were all psychological warfare, right? It's much more devastating. Think about it, to take a Marine, the most highly trained infantry on earth, and wound them with some sort of bamboo thing and send him back to his family in Latrobe, PA or wherever. And like, why are you, I stepped on a fucking bamboo spike. That's what Iran is doing to the US Navy. Or like the more heinous things, like they had these, a lot, if you've ever seen like a snare for like a rabbit or something, right? You take something and you weight it or you bend it over and you put a snare and you trip the snare and it catches a soldier in the foot and lifts him up and it swings him and slams into a tree covered with punji sticks. Probably doesn't kill him either. The punji sticks are covered with buffalo dung. And then the worst part about it is the rest of the people in his patrol have to go get him off of this fucking tree when he's half alive and it's like, it's just awful. This is the approach Iran is taking. This is very well articulated by Mr. Mizrahi. They don't want to sink the frigate. They don't want to give Kid Rock and Donald Trump a big visual for their bullshit 4th of July thing in the Rose Garden. No, what they want is they want the fucking sailors on the frigate to know that there's no operating radar. See the difference? Mm. They could drop those frigates whenever they want. They developed a fucking torpedo with Russia. A drone torpedo. Think about it. It's like a big kayak just swirling around the bottom of the Straits of Hormuz or the Persian Gulf. And it just finds its target and comes up and hits it underneath and it's over. It's okay. So you got that diatribe. Now, the other thing that was just announced overnight is that the R&D spending from China is now higher than the United States. That was an inevitability. Right. So my point to you is like, this is all hitting at the same. This is my thesis. This is like my little thing is that I come on here and say, really, America's in a kind of fever dream. That's like a new hip word on social media. It's in a kind of fever dream of technology and war and finance and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions. Now, here's the problem. To get back to the stroopwafel, the limiting factor is energy. The compute that we've grown up with from like the Commodore 64. I remember my cousin who ended up being the flight director of NASA got a Commodore 64, I think they were called. And I was like, what does that thing even do? Right. Well, he went on to run NASA. You know, I'm an influencer eating stroopwafels. So, in 1983, Steve Jobs gave a speech and explained everything that was going to be built from his little Apple box to they'll eventually be connected with radio, Wi-Fi, to they'll eventually be mobile laptops, till they'll eventually be connected to the phone system and held in your hand, iPhones, which didn't happen for what, 40 years? For 90 to 20 some years. But during all that, the implication has always been that technology is delivering productivity gains. It's delivering productivity gains to somebody somewhere. And that those productivity gains are seen not just in production, like making more widgets or like making cars with robots or something, but that they're financially increasing productivity, meaning the return on capital is going up. Hold on, this is where you go to the next level. But the return on energy. What? No, I know nobody talks about this. Everything is the energy returned on energy. Now, because we live in such a wealthy place with so much food and energy, we don't really think like this, right? So right now, all across the fruited plain, they're planting corn because it makes 15 million calories per acre. Nothing even comes close to it. That's why there's so much of it. I don't corn techno. What are you doing here? It's all about energy. So now what we have in this last gasp of this technological race with China and Iran and Russia and the whole thing is it's the technology that was supposed to make this ever higher return on energy has hit a wall of, wait for it, energy. That's why they're going to build 5,000 data centers here. Who's they? You ever think about like who's building the 5,000? Because the American people are like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like you're going to take all our water and all our natural gas. Yeah. So regardless of whether or not that's the right thing or not, that's why I gave you the stroopwafel thing, because the chips are like so important. We'll get into the NASDAQ here in a minute. All of this is hitting a wall of energy usage. And the whole war on terror, let's take over the Middle East and control the production and flow of energy, doesn't really work unless you can neutralize Iran. If Iran can hit anything at once with a missile whenever it wants, the whole fucking 25-year project is sort of up in the air. And the Roman Empire went down when it attacked Iran, Persia. The USS Gerald Ford was put out of action by Iran. The same didn't happen, but it's coming into the consciousness. I think it's even on MSNBC now. Christ, I even saw on MSNBC that there's like a new internal thing in the Pentagon that we have to watch out for, like Israel's espionage on NBC News. So that's my point to you. Like the whole war psychology of Ben Shapiro and all this stuff is all on the decline, right? And Americans are just, still trying to work the 52 chemicals of the chicken sandwiches out of their brain, but they're sort of waking up to this. What the fuck is going on with Trump and this and energy prices and beef prices? And I just talked to my dad. He's like, I just came from the store. It was like, I tried to find the cheapest beef of chuck roast and it was $9.99 a pound. I said, Dad, why don't you go get a cow and put it in the pasture? Like, just let it walk around. Name it, Louise or something. Just let it do its thing. But people don't quite have the initiative to go, oh, fuck. Okay. You know what I mean? They don't have that like thing that go, yeah, just go get 2 fucking cows and let them walk around. Like they don't have that. No, it's sort of going to work. It's not till it's over that it's over. Now, I will also make the comment on here, and I don't mean this in a real mean way. Many, many, many times, I have this thing that I do on here, and I call it sex and conspiracy. I've said, and I don't even know what I'm saying, I'm just sort of intuiting, I don't think white men are capable of any sort of reform to the system. This is the what's your Roman Empire problem. There was never any reform. They could never reform the Roman system. Really, if you wanted to say what was the reform of the Roman Empire, there was a word for it. It's called Christianity. But that's a whole nother Guinness right there. But, Joel Osteen and Rachel Maddow are not really the reform they pretend to be. They're just, the system's working. God will close this door and open another. And Rachel Maddow has like another tattooed person with purple hair who's going to make it all work. It's the same thing. It's just coming at you from different angles. But America woke up this week and is like, is this really all going to work? So let's run the numbers. Everybody wants to run the numbers. The fact that the market went down a little bit is not really that interesting. You have shit that's been gone up 100%, like the semiconductors and SK Hynix and the SOX index and everything. There's like 2 and 3 time levered ETFs of semiconductors. And getting back to the Steve Jobs thing, it like sort of makes sense. Well, we're going to go into this like fever dream infinite machine of semiconductors. So let's just buy all the fucking semiconductors. That's what the stock market's been doing. Okay. It's not like a rational, like the numbers are, we thought the numbers were like this, but now they're like this or anything like that. It's just crazed fever dream. And I'm telling you, this is like a 9/11 thing. This is the outcome of 9/11. What? In other words, the wars and the tech and the wars and the tech and the financialization and the debt and everything just keeps compounding. So the only way out of this is to make some graph go straight up. But, you're either going to Mars or you're going to live here on the Earth. The Earth has some restraints, namely energy. So the NASDAQ was down 4%. Like statistically, that's a pretty big kick in the nuts. Like 4%. Now there's been 10% days and 12% days in the NASDAQ, but 4% is a pretty good one. And then we had, let's just beat the shit out of NVIDIA for a minute. Okay. NVIDIA doesn't make stroopwafels. NVIDIA does not make these things that stack on top of each other. It just makes big, fast, energy-sucking chips. And it makes a lot of them. They're sort of a commodity, like a stroopwafel. And it was the cheapest, fastest way. Like I like to say, if you had to build a race car in a week, you'd probably go out and get a 454 out of an old Chevy from the 50, or not the 50s, but like from the mid 70s or something, like a muscle car, but very inefficient. NVIDIA is $5 trillion. NVIDIA has funded special purpose vehicles with Apollo with their own equity, levered by Apollo, paid for. The final source of capital is the biggest annuity company, Athene, which is owned by Apollo. They're literally funding NVIDIA with money from little old ladies. They're funding the whole thing with very questionable debt that's otherwise private credit, speculative, wacko debt is being funded with fucking annuity money. Why? Because the United States, the white people don't have a government anymore. White men don't want a government. Milton Friedman, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, they all have something in common. Fuck it. Just let the market run. And now here we are. We have, listen to this number. Even if you're not like financially sophisticated, you're just going to go like, what? Almost 50% of the stock market now is made up of market cap, of companies' market cap. Do you understand what I have to go into the thing? What market cap doesn't have anything to do with the real world. They're like Tesla doesn't have $1.5 trillion of anything. If you don't understand that, you should maybe take a couple years of your life and try to figure it out. I mean, this is what Warren Buffett says on the other side of the equation. He says prices just don't really have anything to do with the value. So NVIDIA is funding itself by funding special purpose vehicles. I mean, how the SEC lets this go on, nobody knows. And then puts Apollo. Remember, Apollo was created by a guy who, I hate to do this to you, but like somebody has to fucking actually deal with reality. So that's why you're listening to me. Apollo was founded by Leon Black. He's the guy that bit a 7-year-old in the pussy before he raped her. That's Apollo. Apollo bought the largest annuity company, Athene, so it could put its big piles of shit on the balance sheet of Athene, not on the balance sheet of Apollo or its high-end accredited investors. Little old ladies who are getting a pension, or it's not a pension, but it's like a pension. That's what annuities are. But these are the people that run Trump. These are the people that run the SEC. Leon Black and Mary Matelson run everything. They're not going to like self-regulate. That's the other thing. There's an official merger now of defense policy of the United States and Israel. You can't make this up. Like, it's almost like there's a script somewhere of like this shit all rolling out at the same time. But let's do NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is worth at its peak $5 trillion. Now I like to do these things where you go like, it could go down 80% and still be worth $1 trillion. Does Google use NVIDIA chips? Not really. A little bit somewhere. Sort of like as a last ditch effort just to deliver on a contract. In other words, for their own that's my point. Like Google and Apple, like the two people that are going to completely dominate AI, are they using NVIDIA chips to run their own? No. Nope. They're using the weird stroopwafel strategic not strategic. I always forget this word. I hate the name packaging. It sounds like the package that the chip comes in, but it's actually the way they're putting the thing together. In Apple, they call it a system on a chip. So the real heavy duty lifting, this is my point, isn't being done on NVIDIA. So it's worth $5 trillion. It could go down 80%. They could lose $4 trillion and still be worth $1 trillion. They could lose 90% and go to $500 billion, still be a massive corporation. Huge fucking corporation. Go down 90%. if they really never diversify out of really inefficient gaming chips that take, they're like the 454 of chips, it'll go down 99% because the whole world will adopt um, specialized packaging. What's it called? It's not specialized, but it's the word's packaging. I wish they'd come up with a different thing because whenever I heard it from somebody close to me, and I always thought it was like the wrapper that the chip came in, and it's not. Anyways, so we have numbers that are just like 1999 and so forth. And the 4% turn, the NASDAQ went up and hit the 50-day moving average and bounced off it. But my big theme to you is, instead of just running the numbers like CNBC would, is I think there's a much bigger psychological thing going on, where people are looking at Trump and the US Navy and Iran and Marco Rubio get off the plane in India and no one even fucking talks to him. That's all the same thing. That's all the same thing. So let's go the other way. I think it was announced this week that Apple is going to pay Google $1 billion to use Google Gemini, which is like lightning fast, which is literally like a demon. It is reading your mind. It's not reading your mind, but it's almost reading your mind. It's almost feels like you're talking to something that's conscious, but it's not. They're going to pay $1 billion to Google to use Google Gemini for Siri. And the guy who wrote the article was like, look, Apple doesn't know what they're doing. They don't have any plan of attack of their own. So they have to pay Google. They make $1 billion every 2.5 hours or something. Like $1 billion is like buying an old weed eater from your neighbor for $1 or something. Like it's not even it's a rounding error in Google and Apple land. The other thing that triggered everybody was the issuing of stock by Google and by Meta, Facebook. Okay. So at the same time that SpaceX is going public, and we're all talking about OpenAI and Anthropic trying to raise like 60, 70, $80 billion, Facebook comes out to do the same thing, and Google comes out to do the same thing. So let's think that through for a minute. I don't think Apple has done that. No. But remember, I haven't looked recently, but these big Google and Apple like have $100 billion in the checking account in Ireland at any one time. Like it's a weird thing to like, what? If you really look at I use Yahoo Finance, just go and look at cash and short-term assets or something like T-bills and stuff. Apple just has $100 billion sitting around just in case, like, something comes up. Google's the same way. Google makes like $400 billion in free cash flow a year. It's like, what? Like $1 billion a day. It's like Saudi Arabia makes like $1 billion a day from pumping oil. Slightly screwed up because of the war, but in the day. Google borrowed, I don't know, 100 billion or 150 billion. So the whole tech world is like just going like this with the chips. Now, it's not all like, a lot of times I know when you listen to me, it sounds like I'm trying to make an argument that everything's going to go down 90%. And I'm really not. I'm just trying to give you a completely different argument than what you get on Bloomberg. But everybody's going all in. But the point is that there's only some companies that can survive that. I don't think Oracle is one of them. I don't think NVIDIA is one of them. I think Microsoft is going to have this kind of some sort of restructuring kind of thing. It's unclear. I think they've sort of cut ties with OpenAI. Apple and Google can do whatever they want. So Google's going to put out like 80 billion or 60 billion or something like that. It's like 4% increase in their share count. It's really nothing. They just have access to the capital markets that are that big. Think about it. That's the other thing. Berkshire Hathaway just sold like pretty much all their consumer shit, which says a lot right there, and then made an investment in Google. So think about this. The greatest investment company of all time, Berkshire Hathaway, is buying Google stock at the same time Google says it's going to issue shares. So the moral of that story is that the people that make the most money and are the best at looking at the cash flow are like, Google's good. It's because Google completely owns AI and Apple owns the hardware. And like Google is the internet. Like it's not like you can be sort of amateurish with it and just say like, yeah, Google is Googling the internet. It's just ad infinitum. It's not that hard. I think longer term, you have to ask yourself, like these software companies that sell software as a service that came out of the 80s and 90s, like I think they strategically are not part of this. I think it's going to be so controlled by just a couple companies that there'll be, and the reason is because the math doesn't math, meaning it's not that the math doesn't math. It means that the math is so hard for humans to calculate. It's like all those things you've ever heard, like algae growing in a pond, and it's this big one day, and it's this big, and then we can't. Humans aren't good at exponential functions. What was the thing I just heard over last night? Like you could fill up a football stadium by doubling in the amount of drops every second or something like that. And you start with one drop, you can fill a football stadium in is it 50 hours? Like, yeah, you can fill it in or it may have even been 5 hours or something insane like that. The doubling of the penny thing. You've heard this. So those things appear to be very stable and very much, and if they have the backing of Berkshire Hathaway, remember that Berkshire has $400 billion in the checking account. So if Google or Apple need money, they just call Omaha. Yeah, we could use 50. I mean, they probably do. What would you think? They probably have a conversation and say, what would you think? We're thinking about doing an issuance about 4 or 5%. And they're like, yeah, we're in for 10. That's probably the kind of stuff that's going on. So the big brand name of AI is probably going to be Google Gemini. And it makes so much money now. Like the big Warren Buffett thesis is, it's really a really interesting thing to think about, that, success can be its own, create your own downfall, like a tragic thing, like, like Apollo Creed gets Rocky and takes him to LA and gets out of the mansion and takes him back to like a boxing gym where everybody's black and scary looking and takes him back into the thing, right? So these big companies that literally print $1 billion a day, the problem is, what the fuck do they do with $1 billion? Like Westinghouse over the hill was sort of like the Apple of its day. It just printed money, like completely. It and GE, just everything in your house had GE or white Westinghouse on it. What do you do with the money? Well, they get some white guy to go in there, like with a tie on and a nice haircut, and he explains why we have to turn this into a hedge fund. And then they're out of business. It just, no, we're not gonna like make things and have engineers anymore. No, that's all gonna go to Samsung and Huawei, and they're just Asian people. They don't really know what's going on. They just are cheap labor. We don't have to compete with them. That's what white people have been telling themselves since Reagan. And now here we are, people. We don't have anything. I mean, we have Google Gemini. This is great. You know, they'll make $500 billion a year or whatever it is. But like, we don't, like the Navy's getting chased out of the Middle East by people who aren't even spending like 1% of what we spend. Follow me? So like the finance, the tech, and the energy, it's all the same thing. It's not really that complicated to understand. What do the American people do with the fact that they're going to poison, like, they're going to degrade, the white people are going to degrade the standard of living. This is like a Thomas Jefferson quote. White men are going to destroy their own country. When I say destroy, I don't mean like the debt or some financial flicky dick. I mean like literally destroy the not the environment in some abstract. They're gonna fucking destroy the energy, the water, the soil, the air to maintain, because it's war, people. It's war. The business model of Rome was war. The business model of America is war. And, you know, I can like shout at Herod's temple, it's never going to change. A system based on war is not capable of reform. And that's why this is called Leaves of Grass. It's like a kind of a, what do you do after the war is over? It doesn't go well. I mean, have you ever seen the picture of Mussolini at the end of the war? Yeah, he and his wife, I think, were hung out of a window. And I think Ceausescu was hung out of a window, I think upside down. Doesn't look real good when 40% of the blood goes into your head. It's not a good look. Conveniently, the Democratic Party is completely fucking worthless. It's just monkey fuck Elizabeth Warren people and people with blue hair, and people just are going to have no effect on anything. I mean, there's some Tallaricos and stuff. There's some interesting things happening. The Republican Party is just completely bought and sold by Mary Adelson. We are now completely merged with Israel because we are Israel. We are completely insane, never-ending, escalating war freaks, and we just can't do anything. We're gonna burn up all the fucking natural gas and turn all the fucking tap water brown because we're gonna lose, and we can't step back from it. So your life, your kids, your wife, your dog, your yard, like everything in your life, if you really get this, you should probably go like, yeah, we should do something different. One of the tricks of this is they told white people that I don't know if you get the joke. I enjoy saying white people. It's funny, right? There's like an irony to it that I'm a white people myself. That they told white people that the stock market is the signifiers. I don't know, some word that like that the metric to measure success is the stock market. Now, Warren Buffett told you the opposite, right? Everything that Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger have ever taught you is that price of Coca-Cola or whatever it is will move in ways that have nothing to do with the output of Coca-Cola or the profitability or the potential return or anything, right? These two things are not necessarily connected. But somehow at the end of his life, with the stock market at 250 times GDP, he says we should buy the S&P 500. There's a contradiction there that I just can't get over. I don't. And then all the Warren Buffetts of the world, all the people supposed to be running the numbers and analyzing things are supposed to just melt off into the sunset and just run the indexes up until they can't run anymore. And that's where we are. That's where we are. The valuation of the NASDAQ is going to run out of energy. What do you mean run out of it's running on energy, right? You never thought about the little box that you bought from Steve Jobs on your desk as like it's completely insignificant in terms of its energy usage. Well, now we have so much compute. Now we have so much compute that the ability for everybody to take on more and more and more in AI is coming up to a cost constraint. It's not just hardware and chips, it's the energy to run them. I think if you wanted to say, is America going to go into a civil war, it's going to be over the complete destruction of whole fucking cities. The ability to live in a place like Memphis is it just pours out like pollution and water and sucks water out of the Mississippi and there's no way to regulate it. We don't have any control over the people who are putting these things, and we don't have any control over the federal government. You saw what happened to Thomas Massey and MTG. We don't have a government, people. This is a machine that's out of control. That's what they want. They want to build a machine that's autonomous. They want to build an autonomous AI kill chain that includes the entire globe and the United States. And most white men can't handle this. They can't understand that they initiated and executed their own destruction. Mizrahi does this. He says white men can't. He includes Jews in that as well. And he does a nice job of talking about them as Ashkenazi because he's not. He's a Jewish Arab. He said white people cannot conceptualize the fact that they have been out-financed, out-maneuvered, out-militarized, out-technologized by people who are not European, by Iran. They can't conceptualize it. And we're going to watch, on the 4th of July, we're going to watch Kid Rock and Trump and this whole shit show. And we have created the whole, like, Hunger Game thing. I think Hunger Games is a psyop, by the way. The author lives in that town in Connecticut where some weird shit happened, but let's all calm down. They're going to sit there on July 4th and realize, oh my God, we've like installed our own demise. I will have a very, very special session on July 4th for you. Okay, I'm going to jump in the car and drive to Tennessee 9 hours to take a nice woman to dinner tomorrow. And I'm sort of given up on white men. I don't really ever care to talk to them again in terms of anything that I'm working on because they just all are like, nothing ever happens and they just want to like feel good about themselves. But I have a good feeling about this meeting. I'll let you know how it goes. I'm really looking for when people come to me and say exactly how will this networked AI thing be built. And I'm like, well, the hardware's at the Apple store. Well, what would the architecture look like? Well, yeah, you can go watch like a 10-minute video of this thing called Chain Opera. It's decentralized AI. Yeah, as a consumer product, we're all going to use Google Gemini, just like we all use, either Apple products or, of course, Android. But I think what I'm doing is maybe a little bit more political than in other words, when I say political, I don't mean like red versus blue. I mean political and you're going to have to create like whole new structures of how humans work with each other. You mean a corporation? Well, sort of. Like, describe Ethereum's corporation to me. It's not easy. Well, there's a foundation, and then there's like all these people building things. It's not easy. To me, that's what Ethereum really is. It's a different business model. It's sort of like a public benefit corporation, sort of like it has a coin, sort of has this. It has like a profit guy, Vitalik Buterin, profit with ET, not IT. I think that's what you're going to have to work on. Well, it's not in a right. It's not in the white paper. Like Ethereum of 2026 was not in the white paper of 2000. When did Ethereum come out? Was it 15 or 2000? I forgot. I should know that. What would it be used? I don't know. It might be, chicken sandwiches. It might be healthcare. Um, I could sit here and just say, like, let's go raise $1 billion. We're just going to make a big, giant nurse practitioner practice. What? We don't need doctors. Doctors, like, I went to the doctor yesterday and he's like talking about bacon and cholesterol. And I was like, okay, dude, like, you're from the 80s. Like, it's been proven a zillion times that a middle-aged guy like myself doesn't have to worry about eating 3 pieces of fucking bacon. But they're indoctrinated and all that, and they can't get out of it. And they just want to put you on that pill so bad. Um, all the issues that you're going to, it ain't coming from the federal government, people. It's not coming from the Republican Party. The Republican Party has completely merged with the theocracy, also known as Israel. The Republican Party is Israel. The Democratic Party is Israel with blue hair. That's it. You're going to see on July 4th that the federal government doesn't even exist anymore. The federal government is a halftime show. Well, who runs it? I don't even know. I study this shit all day. I'm Mrs. Rothschild or something. But I mean, clearly they blew up the Persian Gulf so we could start selling oil and gas from the United States. But that's your oil and gas, people. Like, that's yours. They're going to take it from you. Well, it's ours. Like, the white men have all been indoctrinated in this fucking psychopathic Milton Friedman bullshit. And they're like, well, it's our oil. Okay, dude, whatever. And they just don't have any way to reform. There's no way to get, like, the white men to, like, step back a notch. They just can't. They've become Israelis, and as Mizrahi says, all they need to know how to do is escalate. The fact that some black woman, like, turns on her spigot in St. Louis or wherever it was, and, like, brown water, they don't give a fuck about that. I don't give a fuck about that. Like, white people are going to, like, get billions of dollars to redo the plumbing in Flint, Michigan so that there's not lead in the water. They don't give a fuck. They'd rather flood the thing with lead. We're all Palestinians now. All right. Yeah, Sharon, you're exactly right on that. So I didn't want to turn this into a polemic, but you know how I am. It's sort of a political thing that drives me, and, like, I have to deal with that. But in terms of building out these sort of tech networks, you could look at that sort of as a tech thing. You could look at that as an investment opportunity. You could look at that as something for your kids to do. There's no jobs, people. There's no jobs. I mean, Berkshire Hathaway just sold American Express. Go look it up. I mean, they didn't sell Coca-Cola, but everything else that Berkshire Hathaway did, just let me leave you with this. The NASDAQ went down a little bit. Big deal. Okay. It's really not a very significant 4%. That's a nice punch in the nose to get your attention. The issuing of stock by a company like Google is not really the end of the world. In fact, I think of it sort of like a military thing. Like you push more and more troops in and pull them back and move them around. And like right now, everybody's pushing all their troops in. And there's certain companies that can do that and survive, and there's certain companies that will blow themselves up. That will just they'll do like basically like a Pickett's charge, where General Lee sent, I think it was 100,000 troops a mile across a flat field, and they were just massacred. Just he pushed in all of his chips all at once, and 80% of them didn't come back across the field. That's what's going to happen. That's a pretty good summation of what I'm trying to do with the NASDAQ war thing. We're pushing all our chips in, and it's not just to build technology. It's like, you can hear it from the politicians all the time. Like, we have to win this AI race. It's because we're at war with the world, right? And we're going to lose. It just, there's no, I mean, we're going to run the internet. Like, that's great. I mean, I don't really think the people that run the fucking world care if Americans are here or not. No, I'm sure you heard about the thing with Bill Gates and like the ticks that like make you like allergic to meat. I, I'd be surprised if he's not doing that. This is who runs our civilization. This is very Roman Empire. Like when you study the last couple chapters of the Roman Empire, I mean, it really comes down. Some people just say that they were all insane from drinking water with lead in it, and they just all went mad. They just all became like their brains went to an IQ of 70. You know, is Mitch McConnell going to get real upset about that black woman who said sometimes the water comes out brown? Fuck. Mitch McConnell's constituency would like to make all the water brown for all the black people. That was harsh. I'm sorry. Maybe shouldn't have said that. Anyways, it's all here, people. It's like this is the big thrust of the money and the U.S. Navy, and it's all happening at the same time. That's my big theme to you on here, is that ultimately the NASDAQ is the war, and the war is the NASDAQ. And if you stick around, if you want to do something different.